Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a Kickstarter preview for Dungeon Brawl from Tableflip Games. Not to be confused with Dungeon Crawl like many other games. This is a game that takes place after the dungeon has been cleared. It is a fast-paced, really straightforward game where all of the adventurers are fighting, literally, over the loot that's left.
Absolutely. So it is a 3 to 5 player game, plays in about 30 to 60 minutes. Each player is going to be representing one of the archetypes. You have clerics, you have wizards, rangers, a warrior, and a rogue. And at the start of the game, you're free to pick any one of these. So one of the cool aspects about the game is that there's a light deck building aspect to it too. So if you play games like Magic or Destiny or Netrun or any of those games where you're building a deck, you have a large collection of cards, but you have to come down to 12 total cards to use. So if you want to play a game that's heavy in attacking or a game that's heavy in defense or a mixture of those, you can decide right at the start.
Yeah, and that makes a difference because these characters are very different from one to the next. The games we've played, the wizard, in fact, had a lot of attack power depending on how you build his deck, where others played pretty differently, for sure.
Yeah. So at the start of the game, you're going to build a deck of 12 cards. Those cards are going to range from actions, quick actions, move actions, attack actions, and then you're going to draw 3 wound cards. Now, there's 2 basic types of cards in the game. There's wounds and then there's treasures. Everyone's going to have 3 wounds seated in their deck. They're basically negative victory points at the end of the game, but they're also dead cards in your hand. And then in reverse turn order, starting with the last player, you're also going to draft your 16th card, which is going to be one of the artifact cards in the game. These artifact cards can be a variety of different things. They can be attack cards or action cards or reaction cards. They do a whole variety of different things.
Yeah, the artifacts have a lot of unique special powers, some of which will synergize really well with your particular deck. So if it happens to come around and you have the chance to grab it, you can. And like Jeremy said, the wound deck is really interesting because it not only holds the wounds, but it holds the treasures. So as you're dealing damage in the game, you take cards off the wound deck, and whoever took the damage takes any wound cards. Whoever did the damage is going to receive the treasure.
Yeah, so you're going to build that deck. There's going to be an X number of wounds and treasures that are mixed together. We have a 5-player game set up, so you have 25 wounds that are set in this deck, mixed in with 15 treasures, randomly assorted and placed here. Also, you're going to have some traps. There's going to be a number of traps in the game. These are going to be revealed at the start of the starting player's turn. Now, in turn order, once you're done building your deck of 16 total cards, the starting player is going to place their figure anywhere on the board, and then in turn order, you're going to place wherever you so wish. This is the starting locations. Now, this board is represented by 6 different locations. It's important to be in a specific location because if you're a ranged player like myself, the wizard, you want to have some distance from other players because you're heavy on attack but very light on defense.
Yeah, this is a very crowded fight. You know, like we said, the dungeon's been cleared. You're all in the last final room of that dungeon together. So 6 spaces, and you can play up to 5 players. That leaves 1 space empty. You can occupy the same space as another player, but with the different types of attacks that come up, like Jeremy said, there's some range attacks where you really need to get some distance between you, or you can even be in the same square and do some specific damage.
So looking through your deck of cards, there's a variety of different types of cards in the game. There's cards that are attack actions, there's move actions, there's double actions, there's quick actions. There's ones that have variable actions where you're picking either a top action or a bottom action on them. And there's even reactions where if someone attacks you, you can react with those cards. At the start of the game, each player is going to draw 6 cards into their hand. And on your turn, it's very simple to play. You're either doing a move, or an attack and a move, or a move and an attack. It's that simple.
Right, you're going to take 2 actions. You get a move action and an attack action, or like Jeremy said, some combination therein. It's not just cards that are being played out of your hand, though. You're going to take those actions, and then you could play a number of different cards that will help sort of fuel those actions, if you will. You can boost them with some quick actions that don't count against the actions that you're taking. Or as your attack action, you're usually going to, or in almost every case, play a very specific attack card that serves as the attack action.
Also, you may draw wound cards from your hand, or even treasure cards. Both of those cards are dead cards. However, wound cards in your hand are worth -1 victory point at the end of the game, and treasures are worth +1. The wound cards are kind of cool though, because if you have 2 of them in your hand, you can actually discard them to your discard pile to draw a card. There's also ways to get rid of these permanently. Each player is going to start with some health potions that allow you to take these cards from your discard pile and put them back into the wound discard pile, so you don't have those circulating through your deck every round.
Yeah, so let's talk briefly about how kind of a round works. Like Jeremy alluded to earlier, at the very beginning, the start player is going to flip over that top trap card. The trap cards are generally going to affect one of those 6 spaces. So they're going to flip it over, and this is where this dice comes in. You might have seen this dice and thought, oh, it's a dice chucker. It's not a dice chucker. This is mostly all card driven, but the dice does represent where the trap is going to go. Oftentimes you'll roll this up twice and literally put the trap card or a card representing the trap in that specific space or 2 spaces, and then there's a trap card that, you know, it says what is happening in that space. There might be acid, there may be all sorts of different things. You might not be able to move into that space. So it basically just sets the tone for the rest of that round and what you can do and how you can move and maneuver around the room.
So on your turn, as we said, you're allowed to take 2 actions in any combination. However, you're only allowed to attack once. You're using those cards to take those actions. However, anytime on your turn, you're allowed to move 1 space freely if you don't have a move card. The attack actions are all explained on the cards themselves. Now, when you look at these cards, they show you on the top number how many people you can hit. For the wizard, I have range attacks, which means I can typically hit multiple squares at the same time, but sometimes they may have a number in these locations saying that you can only target 1 player at the table. The next number below that is the range, how far away you can hit it. If the number is 0, you have to be in the same square as that player. If you're 2, you have to be 2 orthogonal spaces away. And the final one is how much damage that you do. And then a whole bunch of flavor text down here saying how that attack interacts with the player that you're attacking.
Yeah, and you might think this is just a game where you're running around throwing damage at each other. And to some degree, there is a lot of that going on. But these characters play different enough to where it really offers a little bit of different flavor with how you play. For instance, the cleric, which someone played in one of our games, doesn't really go in a very direct way and do damage to try to get treasures. A lot of their cards are going to make it so it's harder or less to your advantage to attack them.
Yeah.
So this game is not about killing each other. There is potential for player death, although very slim. This game is about surviving until all of this wound deck is gone.
And in the case of the cleric, that's kind of cool because at the end of the game, you don't want to have those wounds because they are negative victory points. But you can also craft your deck for him and play more attack cards in your deck if you want to take that route.
Right, and you need to attack in order to get treasures because if you don't attack, you're never going to get a treasure.
Yeah.
I mean, at least unless there's a card in here somewhere that we didn't see that gives you a treasure, you're going to have to do some attacks. So like Jeremy said, you can hold back as long as you want, but you need to grab something here and there.
Yeah, you're going to keep taking turns around the table. There are some times at the start of your turn, tokens will be removed. The cleric, for instance, is allowed to take armor tokens and fatigue tokens and place them on players, but those will go away when it starts his turn again. Also, at the end of your turn, you are allowed to keep 1 card or no cards, and then draw back up to 6 cards in your hand, so you have a fresh hand of cards to deal with other players' actions at the table. The game is going to end when this entire wound deck is gone and distributed to all the players, either from damage or from treasures that they acquire. And you're simply going to finish out that round. So you're going to end with the player who was the last player in the round. You're going to go through your deck and you're going to tally up all the different treasures and all the different wounds. +1 point for every treasure, -1 point for every wound.
Yeah, so hopefully by the end of the game, you've done well enough to where you're going to net out to somewhere north of 0 points. But it can happen where you get negative points if you happen to take a lot of damage and you just don't get any of those treasures. So you want to make sure you want to survive, but at the same time, you need to get some of that damage dealt.
Yeah, I think this is really going to appeal to the player who doesn't want to dive into a CCG and spend thousands of dollars buying cards, wants something that's easy, accessible, they can play. There's a large variety within the different archetypes that you have here, and then the ability to kind of construct your decks to however you so wish, depending upon the cards that are available for that particular class.
Yeah, it definitely pushes some of those CCG buttons for people, and I think it's one of those games also that you're going to want to try a different character the next time, or like Jeremy said, maybe take a look at the deck of cards for the character you played and maybe recalculate what you want to do.
Right, so this is Dungeon Brawl from Tableflip Games. It is 3 to 5 players, 30 to 60 minutes. If you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com.